Welcome to FSPA Sports Recap Podcast. I'm Gina Schoenfeld.
And I'm Jaden Sheridan. We're going to be recapping the Week 1 NFL football season. Getting into our headlines, the AFC South remains winless after the Colts and Texans tied against each other. A.J. Brown had a great debut, having 155 yards, leading in the win over Detroit, and Trayvon Walker having an interception and a sack in a performance against the Washington Commanders.
Our first game we'll be covering is the Buffalo Bills versus the defending Super Bowl champs, the Los Angeles Rams, and quarterback Josh Allen was the star of the offense, completing 24 of 29 passes for 279 yards and 3 touchdowns. Matthew Stafford on the Los Angeles Rams could not compete, completing only 29 of 41 passes for 240 yards. The Buffalo Bills ended up winning the game 31-10.
And that was a good first win for the Bills to open it up for Thursday. Moving on to the Sunday 1 o'clock games. At first, you have the Eagles at the Lions. Jalen Hurts played well, 18 for 32, throwing 243 passing yards, but most importantly, rushing the ball for 90 yards and had a rushing touchdown. A.J. Brown with 10 receptions and 155 yards, and James Bradbury with a very crucial pick six that gave the Eagles a win 38-35 over Dan Campbell and his Lions.
Next up, we have the San Francisco 49ers versus the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields threw for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the other side of the ball, Trey Lance threw for 164 yards but threw an interception. Deebo Samuel had 52 yards receiving and scored the only touchdown for the 49ers.
And moving on to one of the more thrilling games in the 1 o'clock window, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals. It was a battle until the end of overtime, with Mitch Trubisky throwing for 194 yards and a touchdown for Pittsburgh. And Joe Burrow had a rough start, throwing for 3 interceptions and a fumble until turning it around in the second half. He threw for a total of 338 yards. Jamar Chase had 129 receiving yards and a touchdown. And Chris Boswell and the Steelers finally took that one in a late overtime field goal.
Chris Boswell's game-winning kick was definitely a thriller for me in that game. What did you think about it, Jaden?
I'm sure the Steelers got to feel good after that one. I mean, no one was able to make any kicks. You missed a kick in the fourth quarter. The Bengals missed that kick in overtime. And for Chris Boswell to finally seal it off and do what he does best, perfect first win for Pittsburgh to me. So going on to, Gina, you watched the Patriots at Dolphins game, right? Great opener for the Dolphins, right?
Of course, being from Miami, we have to support our Dolphins. And Tua did not disappoint in this game, throwing 270 yards and 1 touchdown, and Tyreek Hill was insane this week, with 8 receptions for 94 yards and 1 touchdown. I mean, no one can stop the cheetah.
So great game for Tua and the Dolphins. Tua really proving everybody wrong, but Mac Jones had a bit of a struggle. He threw for 213 yards. He had the touchdown. He did throw an interception. Patriots could not stop Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill. Great win for Miami. They 1-0, and the Patriots, Bill Belichick, got to figure something out as they dropped to 0-1.
All right, so now taking it up to North Carolina, Baker Mayfield threw 235 yards against his old team, the Browns, for 1 touchdown and 1 interception.
Yeah, so important game for Baker Mayfield as, like you said, playing his former team. He played okay. Robbie Anderson contributed to the receiving core a lot with 102 yards and a touchdown. But Jacoby Brissett and the Browns came to work. Brissett with 147 yards and a touchdown, and Nick Chubb ran the ball all over that Panther defense for 141 yards. Browns took that one 26-24. Yeah, but then now going down south to Houston, Davis Mills, sophomore quarterback, as the Texans take on the division rivals, the Colts. Matt Ryan's first game, he had 352 yards, a touchdown, and threw for an interception. Jonathan Taylor did not disappoint with 161 yards and was able to get into the end zone. O.J. Howard was Davis Mills' number 1 target with 2 touchdowns and 38 receptions. The game went into overtime, and they tied. Nobody won in overtime. Both teams are 0-1. And speaking of the AFC South, a team that did lose, the Jacksonville Jaguars, as they went to play Carson Wentz and the Washington Commanders. Carson Wentz with a revenge game against the Jaguars. He threw for 313 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Trevor Lawrence struggled to get it going early, but he turned it around with a couple passes to James Robinson. He was able to get into the end zone. And Trayvon Walker with a good rookie debut with a sack, a forced fumble, and an interception. Jacksonville did fall 28-22 and drops to 0-1.
Wow, Jaden, that's definitely going to be a tough loss for the Jags. Marcus Mariota threw for 215 yards and had 72 rushing yards. Cordero Patterson had 120 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. However, this wasn't enough against the Saints because Jameis Winston put up 269 yards for 2 touchdowns and Jarvis Landry had 7 receptions for 114 yards.
So yeah, the Falcons were up 27-10. and then the Saints just turned it around, came back. Good win for Jameis Winston, 27-26 New Orleans. Lamar Jackson, he's looking for a good comeback season. They took on the Jets. Lamar played good, 213 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he threw an interception. Were you able to catch how the Jets played with Joe Flacco at quarterback?
Joe Flacco did have a pretty good game with 370 yards and 1 touchdown. Although he threw 1 interception, it wasn't enough against the Ravens because the Ravens ended up winning 24-9, Jaden.
Yeah, obviously a big loss for the Jets as they didn't have Zach Wilson, but Joe Flacco tried. Wasn't enough as the Jets will fall to 0-1. Moving on into the 4 o'clock games, Packers at Vikings. Nowhere near close for poor Aaron Rodgers. He had 195 yards and an interception. But Justin Jefferson, dude, 184 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kirk Cousins and him had that connection since the first snap. The Vikings took that one 23-7. And another good game in that 4 o'clock window. The Giants versus the Titans. It went all the way into the end. Saquon Barkley had an amazing game. Sterling Shepard with that receiving touchdown towards the end. But Randy Bullock missed that field goal for the Titans, and the Giants took that one 21-20. Great first win for New York. Definitely something that will boost their momentum coming into the season. But going to LA, the Raiders versus the Chargers, one of the best rivalries in the past couple seasons. Justin Herbert was able to come out with the win, 24-19. Raiders will fall at 0-1, and the Chargers will bump up to 1-0. The Chiefs and the Cardinals wasn't even close. Patrick Mahomes was too dominant, had 5 passing touchdowns, and Travis Kelce got involved in that receiving game as well. And Kyler Murray was no match for Patrick Mahomes. Chiefs take that one 44-21 over Kyler Murray and Arizona Cardinals.
All right, Jaden, you know what time it is? It's Sunday Night Football.
One of the most iconic parts of Sundays. Can't miss it. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Dallas Cowboys. Brady retired, came back, still doing the job. Were you able to see that game and how it went?
Yeah, Jaden, the Cowboys are still in their rough period, I would say.
The next night for Monday Night Football to cap off a very interesting week, a lot of upsets, but it was Russell Wilson, his revenge game, going to Seattle, where Geno Smith played really good. He had 195 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos just weren't able to get that win. They lost 16-17. As the Broncos sadly fall to 0-1. So for game of the week, I'm going to go with Jacksonville at Washington. It was a very back and forth game. Rough start for Jacksonville. They were down 14-3 at the half. But Trevor Lawrence gave him some energy. But that defense, man, Carson Wentz was too much, which is why I'm picking Carson Wentz as my player of the week. Kind of a surprise. He had 4 touchdowns. He did have the 2 interceptions. But those last 2 touchdowns late in the fourth is really what won the game for the Commanders. I'm going to have to go with him for my pick.
Jaden, I would have to agree with you with that being a great game. However, my game of the week this week is the Steelers versus the Bengals. With those 2 missed field goals at the end and that final field goal made by Chris Boswell, he really did just win the game for the Steelers. However, my player of the week this week has got to be Justin Jefferson. Going 184 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, he was just outstanding against his game against the Packers. That's all for FSPA Sports today. I'm Gina Schoenfeld.
And I'm Jaden Sheridan. Thank you guys for tuning in.